Good afternoon, Santa Clara. I'm Mayor Lisa Gillmor. Thank you for joining us for Mayor at Noon. You will have an opportunity to ask us questions live today. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted us in so many ways. Unfortunately, the pandemic has negatively impacted the families in ways we may not always hear about. While COVID-19 lockdowns helped to slow the spread of the virus, it also created an environment for increased domestic violence. Studies show that the stress caused by the pandemic, income loss, the inability to pay for housing or food further exacerbated the silent epidemic of domestic violence. October is recognized as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I am so pleased today to introduce our viewers to Zakia Afrin from Maitri. Thank you for joining us, Zakia.
Thank you, Lisa, for inviting us.
Let me talk a little bit about Maitri. Maitri began in 1991 when a group of women came together to set up a confidential phone line for South Asian women survivors of domestic violence. The women saw the critical need to support the cultural and language gaps immigrant women faced. Zakia has been an advocate for immigrant women for over 15 years in the Bay Area and currently oversees survivor advocacy programs at Maitri. She is also a senior fellow and adjunct professor of international law at Golden Gate University in San Francisco. A social justice activist at heart, Zakia has served on many boards and councils to end domestic violence. So officially welcome to our show, Zakia. Thanks. So I'd like to start with you telling us a little bit about yourself. Can you tell our viewers how you became involved in public service and working with the community? And when you were growing up, did you always know that you wanted to help people?
Thank you, Lisa. When I was growing up in a newly independent Bangladesh, I had seen many powerful women leaders around me. At that time in India, there was Indira Gandhi. In Sri Lanka, there was Bandar Naika. In Bangladesh, Khaleda Zia and Sheikh Hasina. In Pakistan, Benazir Bhutto. So all of these women really made an impression on me at a very young age. And I could see that public work is so important and women can truly make an impact connecting with the community. Together with this, my own family's history of social engagement and nation-building efforts, I think that was what brought me to public service. So when I went to law school, I knew that I wanted to work in the areas of human rights and social activism.
Is that what you specialized in law? Was it human rights? Okay.
Yes. So that's when I knew that this is how I want to spend my life.
And here you sit today. It's pretty amazing, and it's so wonderful that you had all those women role models, you know, in public service to be able to see that women can do anything. I don't know how much has changed, but at least it brought you here today. So tell us about what led you to your current position of survivor advocacy for Maitri, and what does that mean?
So I first began working at the helpline for Maitri as a student in the United States. That was in 2006. And I was very fascinated with this organization. You know, South Asia is a hugely diverse continent, subcontinent we call it, right? So many different languages, ethnicities, different religious backgrounds, and even political turmoils. And all these women coming from different backgrounds, they found home at Maitri when they were in trouble. They felt comfortable calling the helpline for South Asian women. So that truly impressed me, that how Maitri was set up, and how Maitri was was able to make real change in the community in terms of talking about domestic violence, in terms of providing services for domestic violence. So that's when I began as a part-time helpline person, and then I continued to stay there. And I was truly fortunate that the Maitri leadership, they allowed me to grow with the organization. So today when I'm the director at Survivor Advocacy, what that means is I get to work with all of our client advocacy programs, which is our helpline, our legal program, our housing stabilization program, economic empowerment segment, and also our outreach and prevention.
So you talked about all the different cultures and languages and religions of the predominantly women that you serve. We'll talk about who you're actually serving. Do you have the ability to communicate with all of them? Because are there tens, hundreds of languages? Like, how are you able to get the right information to these different languages and cultures?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in India itself, there are 20 official languages. And then if we take into account the indigenous languages, there are 100 more.
Oh,
but within our agency, our staff members can cover up to 9 different languages that are in South Asia, India, and others. And our volunteer pool can also contribute to additional maybe 6 or 7. So altogether, in-house, we have the capacity for 15 languages. And then, of course, we try to encourage our community members to get the interpreters training and help us whenever we need.
And give back after they receive help, to give back as well?
Absolutely, yes.
Right. So Maitri focuses on serving South Asian women, as you said, predominantly first-generation women of color who are facing domestic violence, as well as you provide other services. So tell us about the history of how Maitri got started, because you provide a lot of services now, but it started somewhere. We talked a little bit about it in the beginning, but tell us about the history here.
Yeah, so before going to the history, I just wanted to address who we serve. The reason we talk about serving women more, because they are more in numbers. There is a study that came out in 2012 which found that out of 5 victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, 4 were women. So they're overwhelmingly majority in numbers, but our services are open for anyone who may need it without discrimination. Now, going back to Maitri's origin story, it's a really success story of Silicon Valley's social innovation story, right? It began in a kitchen with a phone line. So 4
with
friends.
One phone line in a kitchen?
With one phone line, yes. So 4 friends, they were all Indian women. They began this service to pick up messages. They were taking turns in pick up messages. That was in 1991, because they felt that there was this need for language access for women who were coming from South Asia and facing domestic violence, but the mainstream agencies were not prepared to provide culturally responsive services to them. So that's where this idea was born. And they had a lot of hurdles in the beginning, but 30 years later, now we have 15 staff members. We have all these holistic support services that can truly rehabilitate somebody from a devastating situation. And I must also add that we started documenting this history of our agency, which is actually one of the first South Asian women's organization in the United States. We started documenting it in a Maitri oral history project. So in our website, if you go to our website, we have captured a couple of our founders' stories, and we are continuing to do that from people who were there at the beginning to learn from their wisdom.
It's amazing how this has blossomed, and it just shows the need for your services to have this be as successful as it is. I learned about Maitri from a constituent who came to the mayor's office here in Santa Clara looking for help from the abuse of her husband. And she had a son, and the husband was taking the son and, really disparaging her to her community. And she was here alone. She didn't have any family members or others, no one to help her, and she turned to Maitri, and that's how I learned about the organization. And it's certainly it's fascinating and it's so needed. As I hear some of the stories, I'm sure you're going to let us know. Let's talk about who you serve now and the main reasons people reach out for your help. But before that, I'm wondering if you can describe the different forms of domestic violence, because some people may think that domestic violence means that it's physical and that you have to show bruises or cuts or broken bones to really describe domestic violence, but it's so much more than that. So I'm wondering if you can describe the different types of domestic violence for our viewers.
Thank you for that question. There is so much of misunderstanding about this issue. Like you correctly point out that if there is a bruise, there is physical abuse, then it's domestic violence, otherwise it's not. But I think we are trying to move away from that narrative, both in the legal scenario, because now law recognizes that emotional abuse, financial abuse, these also are qualifying as domestic violence. Especially in family court, people can seek protection if they're going through emotional abuse, extreme control, financial abuse, sexual abuse, and other types of abuse, which may not leave any mark on anybody's body. But
right.
The scars that we don't see could be much deeper and more dangerous to live with. So absolutely different types of domestic violence we are seeing. And for immigrant women, one of the major tools of abuse is the immigration status.
Right, I want to hear about that.
Yes, so false threat of deportation when there is no basis for it, right? Not sharing immigration information with the spouse, not filing required documentation within time, and also using children who are born in the United States to threaten somebody to stay.
Right? Using
yes.
the children as tools.
Absolutely. So all of this, and recently the law also recognized coercive control as domestic violence. You know, you may just, without doing anything, you can control somebody's life from dawn to dusk, and not allowing them to be themselves, do anything on their own. So that is also domestic violence. So I think we have made some progress where we are recognizing these things as domestic violence. In terms of who we serve, as you mentioned in the beginning, yes, predominantly first generation immigrant women and other genders, whenever they call us. We also are getting calls from our elders in the community if they're living with adult children and suffering abuse. So it's not just intimate partner violence that we see. We see second generation South Asian children who are born here and having issues with their parents who are first generation. There's so much of cultural conflict that may come in. So we also get a call from adult children of immigrant parents. So all of these issues. Then there is one criteria that is absolutely not addressed in the legal system in the United States, which is the abandoned spouses. So there are many citizens or residents of the United States who would travel to home country, get married there, and once they come back, either they completely abandon the spouse and not send any information, support, or even immigration paperwork, or even if they bring the spouse, at some point they abandon them.
Right, that's what happened to the woman that came to see me. Her husband brought her over, she had her son, and then was abandoned here with no one and turned to Maitri for help.
Right, so we see, we actually get many calls like that. So last year we did a small research with 10 of our clients, trying to see what are the patterns and what are the needs of these people that are in this very unique situation. And we found that it begins from when they're getting married to when they're coming here, lack of information. There is a lot of different issues that come in to those places. So we are hoping to look into details for that. If you are interested, I would urge people to see in our website, we have a report. And that's part of a larger report that we did research with Community Solutions and other of our domestic violence agencies
Yeah, you
in the
partner
county.
with a lot of agencies, and we're going to give information at the end of the show for
Okay.
people can go to your website, look,
Yes.
and see the resources available. Because
Right.
as you said, it's a slew of services that you may need for one domestic violence victim.
Absolutely.
And a lot of them revolve around immigration and legal issues too. So I've heard that it may take multiple tries to get help before, and I'm just going to say a woman at this point since 90% of your victims are women, before they change the current violent domestic violence situation. Is that the same for individuals that you serve? Does it take multiple times for them to finally decide that this is the moment that they need the help and they're ready to leave?
So we don't have any statistics about it, but from my experience, I can safely say that once somebody has called us, we can assume that this person had tried her inner circle already. This person probably has reached out to friends and families, and sometimes the faith community and others that they know of.
So there's kind of signs that they're putting out there, hey, I need
Yes.
help in different, maybe subtle or not so subtle ways, right?
Right, and then organization is often not the first choice. People want to get this resolved within their own capacity, so many times they would come to us after they have actually gone through all of this.
Okay. Okay, so we did talk about the immigration issues and the impact that domestic violence has on women and children that may be here. And I know that happens, we have a lot in Santa Clara. I know that we have family members that are in the family, dependent family member visa. Is it the H-4 visa? That are here.
Yes.
And when they're not able to get the help or their spouse abandons them, is that when you pick up to help them? And when children are, legally being used as pawns or tools against the woman, but she has nowhere to go and no family here.
Right, so that's a very unfortunate situation for many of our clients, because this is a big group. We are in Silicon Valley, so we have a lot of H-1 temporary employees and H-4 visa holders. So two things we see very all the time. So one of them is not having the work authorization, how that actually perpetuate the abuse that's going on in the home, right? No resources of themselves, no power to make any decisions at that point, which would require some financial means. And then the second one, as you correctly mentioned, is children. If the children are born here and then for domestic violence or any other reason, if the marriage has to be broken, then the question becomes where would the children go if one parent does not have immigration status here? So many of the people who seek help from the criminal justice system, they may have a recourse to an independent visa status, but that's not the case for everybody. So we have to see, when somebody reaches out, we see their complete situation, we talk to them about their options, connect them with different resources, and depending on what they feel is the best solution for them, that's what they do.
Do you provide housing for some of the women that are really, some of them just really left on the street with no resources? And we all know how financially challenging it is to live in the Bay Area, but some are just left on their own. So I know you provide a bucket of resources, but is housing one of them?
Yes, so we do have a transitional housing program, which is once somebody has stayed in a shelter for 3 months or more and they're ready to take the next step, that's when our transitional housing program accepts their applications, keeps them in the wait list. And if they're eligible and everything works out, our housing program can take them in. We also have the county-funded housing, RRH or HPS, and some of those housing assistance available.
Great. Okay.
So we can assess people to see who can qualify for those and help them.
Okay, all right. The global pandemic and domestic violence, was this the perfect storm? So tell us about your services and how challenging it still is for women to take that first step to get help.
It's perfect storm.
Perfect storm.
That's the exact word that the United Nations used right after 3 weeks. There was a press statement from the United Nations Women Executive Director, and she said how this pandemic was a perfect storm for controlling and violent behavior at home all around the world. So absolutely, we have really seen so many of our clients, they just fell out of contact because they were
stuck at home, right?
Yes,
Isolated, which is the worst for domestic violence, right?
Yes, that is the worst situation.
Yeah.
I mean, they couldn't go out, they couldn't seek help, they were emotionally really broken down with all these additional responsibilities. When children are home, nobody's going out, there's so much of pressure already in a toxic relationship. So it was really unbearable for many of our clients. We did not hear from them for a long time. Then we started hearing from them again when things are opening up. And then the other group that probably has just escaped abuse and trying to build their life on their own, they really went back many steps. Yes. They needed financial assistance. Some of them lost jobs, and they were in a really bad situation. So many of our clients were going through extreme anxiety, and we needed to provide a lot mental health support.
So many people were in extreme anxiety without the domestic violence element of it. So you think when you add that on to the situation, how it's just explosive, and sometimes in very small quarters as well.
Absolutely.
With the children on Zoom and the class, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
So this may not be a super fair question, but I'm going to ask you this before we take any questions from the audience or comments. There are many opinions about the root cause of domestic violence. So in your experience, I want to know what you have seen, what you're seeing, and are we just treating the symptoms and not the real issue? And does it really begin at home? I know it's a lot to ask you in a short period of time.
But it's a very important question that we need to ask, because we have been asking the wrong questions for some time, right? Why she is not leaving, instead of asking why is he abusing, right?
Correct.
And we are asking what is she doing wrong, rather than asking why is he behaving like this. Right, so I think the root cause from what we see from our experiences is the power and control. That's at the root of this domestic violence and all type of violent behavior. And patriarchy is the main encouraging factor for that, right? That's bringing in gender inequity, where men and women and other genders are not equal. One group is superior to the other. And that's what is manifested when somebody is getting married in a relationship. Who gets to have the last word? Who gets to control the other partner? And of course, we need to, if we want to address this, we have to begin at home. So there are so many programs now that are focusing on schools, healthy behavior, teaching our children how to behave with their peers, within their dating relationships. They're learning about toxic masculinity, and all of these things together. I think not just these children, but also people who are getting married, the immigrants that are coming to this country new. What are the support systems for them before a breakdown happens, before this relationship abuse really goes to the next level, when it needs intervention.
And the cycle isn't broken in many cases. The woman who came to see me had a son, And the son witnessed the dad abusing her, verbally abusing her constantly. As the son grew older, he started treating his mother the same way and talking down to her and that. But you had a great story about your son. And can you just tell that quickly before we go to our comments? Because I think it kind of really gets there as to how much work we really need to do.
So, I think I was sharing with you that in the school there is a water line for, before the recess is over, the kids get online to drink water, and the teacher is telling that girls first, girls go ahead of the line. So my kid is coming home and saying, Mama, why is a girl going ahead of me? Why? Because, I didn't have time to drink water. And
it wasn't fair as far as he's concerned, right?
Yeah, it was unfair to him. Yeah. And, why is this always like girls' education and all of that? What about me? What have I done wrong? Right? And I thought it's really important how I explain it to him. I thought about it for a time and realize that he has no context of what has been happening. He doesn't know that a girl child and a male child is not seen equally by our society. When they grow up, he will understand
the history,
that.
Right? The history of work.
So I tried to break down and told him in a way he would understand that why the girls are going first, because they have been left behind for so long. So I think it's very important how we talk to our children, both our boys and girls, so that they can become equal citizens when they grow up.
Right, and I think that's a wonderful segue into, we're going to go into our comments now, but it just shows the amount of work and the education that it takes for us at home as
Absolutely.
well. But it sometimes takes the partners at home equally together to talk to the children so we can break this cycle.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay, so now let's take, I know we need to have part 2 and 3 of this because there's so much for us to talk about, and I'm hoping you'll come back at some point. So now let's take some questions or comments from the audience. Okay, let's see here. Thank you, Mayor and Zakia, for bringing this topic up to the citizens of Santa Clara. It's an important topic we need to talk about, not only to each other, we need to talk to our children about this as well.
Absolutely.
That domestic violence is not okay. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you for bringing that up. Keep up the good work, Mayor and Zakia. Larry Oliveira. Thanks, Larry. He's a longtime viewer of the show. Thank you, Mayor, for the amazing work. Shabana Ansari.
She's our Maitri legal advocate.
And thank Zakia too, Shabana. Okay. Zakia, so proud of you and your work.
That's a friend of mine.
Oh, very good. Very good. Well, thank you. I think that people are really recognizing the good work that you do. So I would like to conclude this program with a request or a call to action from you on behalf of Maitri that you would like to express to our viewers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting us. And like you correctly said, begins at home. So at home, we talk to our children, we emulate the relationship we want them to display when they grow up. In the community, we donate. Please donate your time or your money, however you can be helpful. Make sure that we don't put the blame on the victims and we try to look at the root causes, what's coming in. We keep in mind that domestic violence cannot be solved in silo. It is an intersectional issue. If there are pay gap for women, if there are, all of this anti-immigrant rhetoric, it's going to hurt everybody.
Hurts everyone.
Including our survivors. So we need to make sure that we support the correct policies that directly or indirectly benefit our survivors and support prevention work for that domestic violence doesn't happen to begin with. And lastly, I would like to invite folks to connect with Maitri in our different platforms. We have a podcast, we have our youth panels that we organize and community panels. Please check out our website and our Facebook page. Let's get involved, all of us, to address domestic violence in our
And it's a tremendous organization, and I'm hoping we have the phone numbers, the email addresses, the website address. check it out. It's really a phenomenal organization, and it helps predominantly women and children. We need the help. We need to support our community. It takes a village to do this. On that note, we have our virtual city council meetings on Tuesday night, but we presented to Maitri the proclamation honoring October as Domestic Violence Month in Santa Clara, so I wanted to make sure that I give you this as well.
Just
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
In person. We'll
Thank
get
you very
a
much.
picture after.
Yes. All right.
Thank you. So that's all the time we have for Mayor at Noon. Join us next time. Until next time, be well, Santa Clara.